Hi guys, I just thought I would come here and do a video for you on my pregnancy journey and I guess experience with gestational diabetes so far. And so for those who don't know or don't follow me on Instagram, this is my second pregnancy. I am about 35 weeks into the second pregnancy. I do have a little one who is about 3 years old. And, since the beginning of this pregnancy, it has been very, very different than my first one. So my first one was a breeze, no symptoms, everything was easy peasy, and pretty much after the pregnancy, I was just like, oh yeah, I would do this any day, right? Because it was just really enjoyable. Not saying that the second one isn't enjoyable. There were just more, I guess, issues, let's just say. My experience with gestational diabetes, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background information regarding the pregnancy in general, especially during COVID. And so from the beginning of the pregnancy, I had other issues, and they're not sure if it's related to the pregnancy or not. Could be related to the hormones. So for instance, I had to go in for surgery during COVID by yourself. Right? And that was interesting in itself. So I had to walk into Emerge by myself, get admitted by myself, go into surgery by myself. And my background is in healthcare, so being in a facility is not new to me. I don't have as many, I guess, concerns or questions as another individual who may not have that context. But I wouldn't say like I would recommend it. Definitely, it is a lot better when you have your spouse or partner with you, your family with you. So yeah, so there was that part. And I guess for healthcare providers out there, I was in pre-ops by myself, and I knew I was pregnant at the time. The team knew I was pregnant at the time. It was earlier on in the pregnancy. And sometimes we talk about like client-centered care, and I can hear, they had, I think it was a physician from from obstetrics who would come and try to get a fetal heart rate for me, and they were like, they couldn't get it. They tried and they couldn't get it. And then you can hear the group of surgeons talking, and they're like, oh, well, since you couldn't find a fetal heart rate, we don't have to worry about it after the surgery. And here I am, and I can overhear this conversation. I'm like, oh, that's reassuring, because they had to put me under general anesthetics. So, typically they would be concerned if they couldn't find a fetal heart rate after surgery. But they're saying that because they couldn't find one before, it's normal. They can't find one after, right? So yeah, so that was interesting. I was just like, oh, like I understood where they were coming from, but at the same time, it wasn't that nice to hear it, I suppose. And so yeah, so they performed the surgery, and then after surgery, they called my husband to inform him, what happened, because I was still kind of woozy from all the meds. And then I went home, and I had wound care. So I had a wound, they had to pack it, and I had wound care for a month to 2 months. So I had to go into an ambulatory clinic every day, every other day, and then they gradually tapered it off for this wound. So that was the first complication, potentially related to the pregnancy. And then while this was all happening, I also had other symptoms. And again, they weren't sure if it was related to the pregnancy. And so I had, basically at the end of the day, I had referrals to 3 specialists. So I had the surgeon, and then I had rheumatology, and then because of all of this, I was classified as high risk, so I got referred to a high risk pregnancy clinic, which, to be honest, I didn't really mind. And just to keep in mind, this is all during COVID. So with the high risk clinic, for instance, you would have to go in more frequently. They also did a lot of virtual phone calls and checkups, so that was nice. And same with my other specialists. Whenever possible, they would try to do phone calls with me rather than seeing me in person. And because of these complications, they put me on corticosteroids, so like a hormone. And for those who may already know, that also increases your chances for gestational diabetes. So that's great. And my specialist kind of slowly tapered off. I didn't have to see so many of them towards now, like at the later part of my pregnancy. And yeah, so recently, you think everything's going well. You go get your blood test done to test to see if you have gestational diabetes. They said typically you have to do 2 blood tests. So if the first one is high, they'll recommend the second one is a 2-hour blood test. So you drink this really nasty, really sweet orange syrup, basically, and then they'll test you 2 hours later. And because of COVID, they can't do that test anymore because they don't want, people sitting in the lab for 2 hours. And so they can't do it, and that one's sort of like the gold standard. So they can't do it, and they basically just referred me to a diabetes education center. So it's like, all right, that's fine. So that got referred, and all of these classes and sessions are virtual. Coming from healthcare, I didn't really mind it so much. I don't know if I would have preferred in-person sessions if I didn't have that healthcare background and completely new to diabetes. I might have had more questions. So there is that piece. But yeah, so I have this diabetes center following me now. I have to monitor my blood sugar 4 times a day. And on the market, there is an option for a device that you kind of stick on the back of your arm, and then you scan it with another device or potentially with your phone to check your blood sugar. So you don't have to prick yourself 4 times a day, but apparently it's not accurate for pregnant people, for moms. At least that's what I'm told by the clinic. And so you still have to do the old-fashioned finger pricking 4 times a day. I actually have mine here. I can't say I was looking forward to it, but it is what it is. It's actually not that bad. So the one that I got is called One Touch Verio Reflect. It kind of looks like this. And here's a little gadget that, you put a needle, a lancet on, and you prick yourself. And then you put a test strip onto this device. You put a test strip in here, and, it does a reading for you once you add the droplet of blood. So I do like this device. It's very cute. It's a colored monitor. There's smiley faces when you meet targets. And then there are like it goes red when you're outside of the range. So that was really nice. This also connects to my cell phone, which I'm actually using to film. I was looking for it. It actually connects to my cell phone, so all the data is uploaded onto an app that I can very conveniently send through email to my provider or to my diabetes team, so they know, how I'm doing. I don't need to worry about, jotting this down the old-fashioned way in a little book. And you can make notes like, were you stressed that day? Did you drink something really sugary? Did you exercise? What did you eat? You can make all those notes on your phone. And on this device itself, you can actually change it and say that the reading was before or after meals as well. So I do like this device. And then, and here's my little jar of lancets. All the times I've pricked myself. all the little needles. I do need to transfer to a sharps container, a legit sharps container. But yeah, that's what the little lancets look like. They're very small. And so I've been monitoring my blood sugars, and the dietitian has made recommendations. So I typically consider our family to be relatively healthy. So it's not like we have a lot of sugary foods, but we might have foods that are higher in carbs. And naturally, coming from an Asian background, we eat a lot of rice, right? It's like our staple. So it's like rice or noodles, or buns and breads and things like that. And so I just had to decrease my portion sizes and just look for healthier, not healthier, but lower carb alternatives, because they weren't unhealthy to begin with. At least I didn't think so. So there was that part. So just making small adjustments in our meals. I also have to eat more frequently, and because of COVID and I do work from home, so there are days when I'm sitting at my desk in front of my computer for hours. I have back-to-back meetings, and then you kind of lose sight of time, and you might be eating lunch later. So if you don't eat for too long, your blood sugar also goes up. Like your body might think that you're starving yourself, and it'll start releasing sugar. So there's that piece. So eating, they recommend every 2 to 3 hours. But they did say, if you don't feel hungry, 4 hours is fine as well. So just snacking, just constantly eating, but each time not eating too much. So that's like a change for me. And then, so typically my blood sugars are pretty good if I do that. The only part that was hard to control is my fasting blood sugar. So I can't really do anything about it overnight. It's like, I'm not going to be eating in the middle of the night. I'm not going to wake up and eat in the middle of the night. And so my fasting blood sugar is a little bit high. And so they recommended insulin. It's like, yay, another thing I need to add. So, here's my insulin, my bedtime insulin. Here's a little needle for it. You kind of take the cap off, you screw this needle in, you dial it up, and you inject it. And you inject, or I inject this to my sides. So those are like the sites that they typically recommend. And to be honest, it's actually not that bad. I found this a lot less painful. Sometimes I don't even feel it actually, compared to my finger pricks. So yeah, it's actually not that bad. The finger pricks, it could also be, I already do it on the side of my finger and not on the actual finger pad, because it's really sensitive on your finger pads. But yeah, I would probably take this any day over a finger prick. So there's that part if you are afraid of needles. It's not the end of the world. It's not horrible. It's only once a day, at least for me. But what happened was, when I started taking insulin, my blood sugar and my fasting blood sugar actually got worse. So there is this effect where with insulin, it happens to some people where their blood sugar actually increases. And so there are recommendations, like things that you can do to help lower it again. And what I found, like I've just been playing around with it myself, not the amount of insulin, but with my bedtime snack, what I've been doing is pushing it further back. And I noticed that helped lower my blood sugar. So eating my snack later at night. And what also helped was increasing the amount I ate, right? So, maybe my body thinks I'm hungry and is dumping sugar. I don't know, but that seemed to be helping me. So yeah, so that's just one thing that I noticed when I took the insulin. The other thing is, hearing all this news can be stressful. stressful. You know, having to monitor your blood sugar in itself, just remembering to do it, you know, 2 hours after meals and all of that, and not having to drink certain things, eat certain things in those 2 hours, you know, that could be stressful. Meal planning can be stressful. And then if you have insulin added on top, that could be also stressful for some people. And the stress itself can also increase your blood sugar. So, you know, there are all these factors. And then with COVID, you're trapped in home. You know, the diabetes team, they're great. You know, they tell you to exercise, and it's snowy here where I live. And being like 35 weeks pregnant, people, at least my family, they don't really want me going out and walking after every meal. Like doing that type of exercise, especially like on my own, nobody's going to trust me. They're afraid that I'm going to slip and fall and, you know, hurt myself and my unborn child. And on top of that, because I'm working from home, like I said, I sit most of the day, like the weekdays, you know, for at least the majority of those 7 hours, I'm like sitting, right? So the exercise part is a little bit challenging. And so like I'm really trying to like tweak what I eat to manage the blood sugars, and it has been working for the most part. I mean, there are days when I know I would eat more carbs and I'm like, oh, that's going to tip me over, and I know it, right? And sometimes it does, and sometimes surprisingly it doesn't. What have I also learned? Sometimes things that seem healthy, you would think it's healthy, but it actually has a lot of carbs in it. It's very interesting. Like my husband and I, we go to the grocery store. We are reading all these labels to see what I can and can't eat because we're trying to do a carb count here. And like for instance, for cereal, you know, the ones that are like almost like cornflakes, healthier versions with nuts and things like that, they're pretty high in carbs. And you can only have maybe 1 cup, and that's even without milk. And carb count wise, that might already throw you off. But then when we're looking at other cereals that are considered less healthy, like the more sugary ones, with like, you know, they're colorful, they have little marshmallow shapes and things like that, those ones surprisingly have less carbs, and I don't get it. I really don't get it. I was like, what is this? Does this make any sense? So there's that part. So I've been trying to avoid cereals in general, just because for that reason, like I wouldn't be able to eat a lot of it with milk. I've done like oatmeals, overnight oats, switched to more whole grain breads or breads with more fiber in it. I have to avoid bagels, even whole wheat bagels, just because they tend to be carb heavy. So really finding what works and playing around with it. I guess the unfortunate piece is when you're enrolled in these diabetes classes, they don't give you a lot of time to figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. So, you know, overall, I was like monitoring blood sugar for a week to 2 weeks, and they're like, okay, we have to put you on insulin now. And if you think about it, like you might try one thing for a day and you're like, okay, that didn't work. So now you're going to do something different on the next day. You're like, okay, that didn't work. But what they see is just the number, right? So the reading, and they're going to say, well, you're high. So this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go on meds or tweak your diet some more or do more exercise. So I found that part a little challenging. The fact that we weren't given a lot of time to adjust our, you know, make the right lifestyle changes, I suppose you can say. And then the other thing was, I don't know about you guys, but I typically go grocery shopping once a week. And so when I had my first appointment with the team, you know, they've made these recommendations, but that was the day I would go grocery shopping. And so I'm like, I already have these groceries, and this is what I have at home. So over the next couple days, you kind of make do with what you have, and you might not be able to make those changes immediately, right? So, you might not be able to go out and get like your brown rice, your parboiled rice, all your fruits and veggie, your healthy snacks, you know, you just have to eat what you have at home. And again, when they look at the numbers, they might say, well, it's high. So yeah, so that was unfortunate, but it is what it is. Definitely with COVID, especially if you have other kids at home and if they're being homeschooled or virtual schooled, there's added stress there as well. And it's really nobody's fault with, like, speaking about gestational diabetes. It's not that you're not making the right food choices, you're not exercising. I don't think you need to blame yourself. And I think as parents, as moms, we tend to blame ourselves. We must be doing something wrong. That's why this is happening. Or even our family members may comment, and it seems like it's your fault, right? You shouldn't be eating that, or you should be doing this. And really, it's not. It's nobody's fault. It does happen to some people. Being a certain age, ethnicity, etc., already puts you at higher risk. And I think, you just kind of have to embrace it and accept it. Like I said, stress itself can cause your blood sugar to go up. And, really what everybody wants is just the best for you and your unborn child. Luckily, this is pretty late in my pregnancy, so I only have a little bit over a month to go. And so, we're almost there. So it's not too bad. I think once I have started figuring out what works for me, it got a lot better. In the beginning, it was a little more stressful because, you would eat certain things. You think, you're doing the right thing. You're doing all the recommendations that they're telling you to do, like all those changes that they're telling you to do, and you don't see it reflected in the numbers, and it's frustrating, right? So I think you just have to take it a day at a time and really figure out what works for you. Even like eating fruits, for instance, because I'm used to eating fruit with meals, especially like with dinner, as like part of like almost like a dessert or something like that. And I couldn't do that because it would always throw off my sugars. And so, you're changing all these things in your life. And, now with COVID, maybe that's the only thing you enjoy. I don't. I know some moms were saying, like in our class, some moms were saying that, they need a certain amount of fiber. Otherwise, they get backed up, because being pregnant, that happens, right? So it just makes everything worse. And, if you're not able to take that fiber in, now you have these other issues. So what I found I was able to do is like sneak in little bits of fruit. So maybe instead of like half an apple, maybe it's like a quarter of an apple. And it just made me a happier person because now I can, eat the things that I was eating before. And that's the other thing. So I would snack in between, and I have been able to eat, cookies, like not like triple chocolate cookies, obviously, not sugar cookies. So I had like oatmeal raisin cookies as snacks. I've had dark chocolate. So it's not all sad and depressing. I still get my sweets in. I just have to time it right. So it's not, right before I'm going to measure my blood sugar. It's not with a meal, for instance. So I've just been testing it, playing around with it, and see what works for me. Hopefully you guys find this helpful. If you have recently been diagnosed with gestational diabetes, or you're also pregnant during COVID, it could be a challenge. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, I do please do. I do share, meal preps. So what I've made for dinner, typically for dinner, sometimes for lunch and breakfast. And so recently I've been sharing lower carb options that have worked for me, and hopefully, it might work for you. So yeah. So I will leave my Instagram handle down below in the details, and I will also link um, the, well, maybe not my insulin because you might not be prescribed the same insulin, but the needles and the glucometer that I'm using. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you find it helpful. Okay, so I just tested my blood sugar, and this is after dinner, so it's within range. And I just wanted to show you, this is what I meant by how there's different colors. So the green part is within range, and you'll notice like right now it says it's high, so the red or the pink. But it's actually before meal, which is not accurate. It should be after meals. So you can actually change it. And this is how you change it here. You can switch it to after meal, and then it'll give you this little smiley face, which is super cute, to tell you that, hey, you're actually within range, good job, kind of thing. The other thing you can also do is go to event tag, click OK, and then here are some options. So you can also do this on your phone. You can say that, you had a high carb meal, you're stressed, you're sick, so illness, you took some meds with or right before your prick, you exercise, so, and then done. So you can click whichever one. So I'm just going to say done. And then on the phone, I usually do like notes. So, what I ate right before, 2 hours before this measurement. And that's how I kind of track, if there are patterns. It also helps let my team know, like the diabetes team know, what you've had. Is a food causing the reading? Like, does it make sense? So sometimes if you eat out, it tends to be really high, at least from my own experience and what the team has told me, that it's normal. When you eat out, you tend to eat more, and a lot of times there's carbs involved, or they might use a lot of sugar, sauces, etc., which would cause a higher reading. Most of my highest readings were when I ate out. So that's just something to note. Right, so what I do is I just take a tissue or cotton pad, so whatever I was using to, stop the bleeding, and I just wrap the stick in there, and I discard this. So you notice once I pull the strip out, the machine turns off on its own. Same thing when I put a new test strip in, the machine turns on by itself. So it's pretty convenient. And you'll notice where I pricked myself, which was my pinky, it stopped bleeding pretty much right away. And I did actually get some questions about this, so I'll just talk about it here. So when you have your little Lancet device, where the thing that you're going to use to prick yourself, the used needle is still in here right now, and I showed you previously how to remove it. So you unscrew the cap, you'll see the needle, if you'll focus. Anyways, the needle is there, right there, and you poke it here to discard. So you don't have to worry about needle stick injuries. Technically, you just prick yourself so many times. It's, your own needle. Well, at least that part is reassuring. And you just push this thing, this middle portion, just push it, and I'll throw it out. So I can put the cap back on. But just to show you, so I have to take my or prick my finger 4 times a day. And usually what I do is I do fasting, after breakfast, after lunch, after dinner. So these 4 fingers is what I do. And then I alternate hands. So, you know, like today I'm using my left hand, tomorrow I'm going to use my right hand, just to give them a break. You are supposed to change the sites, so I wouldn't advise like poking the same finger 4 times a day. It just gives them a little break in between and they can heal. It's not a big prick, like these are all the fingers I pricked today. You barely see anything, you don't notice anything. You know, there's no redness or anything. I haven't noticed like calluses or anything developing, even though I've been doing this for maybe like a couple of weeks now. The other thing I do is, you'll notice on, I believe most devices would have this, a dial here where, so that end you put the needle, this end there's a dial, and so you can dial it up. I don't know, is it going to focus? Up or down, and that would change the length of the needle. So when I first got this device, I tested it out to see how long I need the needle to be in order to actually draw blood. So on these 3 fingers, right, so my index, middle finger, and ring finger on both hands, I need about a 6 to draw blood. All right, so I tried using a 5 and I wouldn't get a good prick, and then I would just have to stab myself again, which isn't fun. So I've been using 6 on those 3 fingers and on my pinky because it's, you know, smaller. The skin on it is probably a little more delicate. I use a 5 on my pinky, and you know, that has worked. I've been able to draw blood with a 5 on my pinky, but the other fingers, maybe the skin's a little thicker because you use those fingers a little bit more. Which is why I need a longer needle, number 6. So test it out, see what works for you, but definitely, you know, check the length, change it as necessary, especially if it really hurts, then maybe it's like the needle's a little bit too long, or it doesn't need to actually be that long to draw that one tiny little drop of blood. And as I mentioned, I also take insulin. And so with insulin, you also have to rotate sites. And to help myself remember, you know, which site to use when, the fit hand or the side that I'm going to prick myself with that day is the same side I'm going to inject insulin on. So if today I'm using my right hand to do my finger pricks, I will be injecting insulin on my right, kind of like my right side, my right hip kind of area. And if I'm using my left hand that day, then I will be injecting it on my left side. So that's just what I do to keep track. Yeah, it's just a little bit easier for me, and hopefully you find that useful.